In general, when people talk about Southeast Asia, Laos is always seen as one of the most peaceful countries. At least it was, until the sounds of gunfire echoed from Myanmar at the end of October 2025. It was an earthquake from the Myanmar border, one that didn't just shake the region through warfare, but also stirred the long slumbering Golden Triangle, once considered the holy land of narcotics. And within that Golden Triangle lies Laos. Why? Because in Laos, everything usually feels calm, peaceful, as if time moves slower than in the rest of the world. But ironically, that very calmness is what makes it so attractive to criminals. A small, gentle, landlocked country bordered by China, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam. In other words, right in the heart of Southeast Asia. Close enough to do business, yet far enough to hide. Above all, Laos is part of the area known to both the underworld and the rest of us, the Golden Triangle, a name that sounds both mystical and menacing. The Golden Triangle is where the Mekong and Ruak rivers meet, the crossroads of three nations. On one side lies Thailand, across the river is Myanmar, and facing them is Bokeo province of Laos. Deep in the forested hills there, a vast stretch of land was leased for 50 years to build the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, a name that sounds clean and legitimate. Behind it all, however, stands one man, Zhao Wei, a Chinese businessman sanctioned by the US, the UK, and Canada for allegedly running a transnational crime syndicate. And now, Zhao Wei seems to be resurrecting his empire with new ambitions. He is what you might call a modern tycoon, though men like him are often simply called businessmen. So what does Zhao Wei do? First, he built and operates the King's Romans Casino in Laos, at the heart of the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone. On paper, it's a luxury tourism project, but international organizations and intelligence agencies identify it as a front for a transnational crime network, a place where underground operations flourish. The U.S. Treasury once called King's Romans a legalized criminal empire. Zhao Wei has also been directly linked to the Golden Triangle's narcotics trade, the region's black specialty. Reports from the United Nations and the U.S. accuse him of providing logistics and safe haven for drug trafficking groups from Myanmar, particularly those with rebel ties. Thirdly, Zhao Wei is believed to protect networks of online scams and human trafficking in the digital age. Over the past 3 years, many witnesses have said they were tricked into working at King's Romans under false promises, similar to scams in Cambodia and Myanmar, only to have their passports seized and be forced into online fraud schemes. In addition, Zhao Wei has been accused of trafficking endangered wildlife, rhinos, tigers, elephants, and more, to entertain VIP clients. To him, that's just business as usual. In short, Zhao Wei's achievement is transforming a poor, remote forest in Laos into a criminal capital of the 21st century. His list of misdeeds could fill volumes. Since 2007, Zhao Wei has turned this borderland into a jungle Las Vegas. Luxury hotels, giant statues, neon-lit casinos, and hundreds of shops displaying Chinese signs. People joke that when you're in King's Romans, you don't know if you're still in Laos or somewhere else entirely. For many in the criminal world, this is one of the safest havens in Indochina. Why? Because Laos has no war, a stable government, and a welcoming stance toward foreign investment. As a result, when Cambodia cracks down and Myanmar erupts in conflict, the underworld's shadow flows quietly into Laos. The attack on KK Park, a notorious scamming hub in Myanmar, is a perfect example. Over 1,200 people from nearly 30 countries fled across the river into Thailand, many suspected to be ringleaders of large-scale scam operations where thousands were forced to type all day to defraud victims online. When the Myanmar military attacked, the syndicate scattered, but they didn't disappear. They crossed rivers and mountains and found safety just a few steps away in peaceful Laos. Since then, the Golden Triangle has reappeared on the map, no longer as a legend of heroin, but as the hub of Scam 4.0, a new kind of 21st century crime. Once again, the land where three countries meet has become the center of criminal activity. The difference is, in the past it was powder, today it's data, trust, and the loneliness of those deceived behind a smartphone screen. The Golden Triangle has a long history of crime. From the 1950s to the 1990s, this region supplied up to 70% of the world's heroin. Back then, one name stood above all: Kun Sa, the Shan drug lord who commanded 20,000 troops, controlled hundreds of armed heroin factories, and once famously declared, "Without me, no heroin would reach America." The CIA at that time was even accused of turning a blind eye because Kun Sa opposed the central government. That entire region became a world of its own, where drugs were currency, guns were law, and blood was capital. After Kun Sa surrendered in 1996, people thought the Golden Triangle era had ended. But crime never dies. It simply changes profession and rewrites its origin story. Today's crimes are far more sophisticated. When drugs were suppressed, casinos emerged. When casinos were banned, online scams rose. What Kun Sa once smuggled on horseback, the new generation now moves with a computer. That's why people say crime in the Golden Triangle has shifted from syringes to fiber optics. And at the center of this transformation stands King's Romans, Zhao Wei's creation. Since 2010, the area has become a haven for investors from China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Thailand. Anyone with money can set up operations here, though many companies are merely fronts for money laundering, gambling, human trafficking, and wildlife smuggling. Thus, when the underworld needs a refuge, Laos becomes its sanctuary. Or more precisely, the tri-border zone between Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Its geography makes it almost untouchable. Borders here are not fences, but rivers and mountains. Police from one country can't easily cross into another. A small boat and the right bribe can make any problem disappear. The ambiguity of this frontier has turned it into a zone of absolute freedom, a place where the law barely reaches. Even regional authorities admit the challenge. Security officials often say, "In the Golden Triangle, there are only two kinds of people, those hiding from the law and those hoping not to be found." Although Laos publicly claims that scam networks have been wiped out, the reality is different. Deep inside, there are still guarded compounds, armed security, and dense surveillance cameras, with most visitors being Chinese nationals. The peace that Laos once proudly held has now become the perfect shield for criminals. While Cambodia faces international pressure and Myanmar is engulfed in war, Laos has become an unintended stopover for the underworld. Beneath the silence, money continues to flow. Kingpins continue to toast, and victims continue to be deceived through phones, social media, and crypto investment schemes. Some say the Golden Triangle no longer deals in narcotics. True, the white powder may have faded, but a far more potent drug remains: human trust. What these criminals traffic today isn't heroin, it's belief. They don't need trucks or mules anymore. All they need is a mouse click, and money flows in. A single operation might run from Laos while its victims sit in Vietnam, Thailand, or even Europe and the US. The Golden Triangle's crime network today is like a three-headed serpent. One head scams online, the other launders money, and the third trades humans. Cut off one, and the others still thrive, their tail rooted deep in the Golden Triangle. People still joke that the Golden Triangle at night is hauntingly beautiful. The lights of King's Romans shimmer on the Mekong like 1,000 diamonds. But look closer, and you'll see the trapped souls, stranded boats, and the quiet sighs of those sold false dreams of wealth. In this borderland, the brighter the light, the deeper the shadow. Laos, once a small, peaceful, and gentle nation, has now, reluctantly, become the new hub for Southeast Asia's criminal underworld. Not because it wanted to, but because the entire region has pushed the current that way. The Golden Triangle has revived once more, no longer as the legend of white powder, but as the legend of digital crime. And if someone asks, when will crime in the Golden Triangle end? The answer is difficult, perhaps only when human greed disappears, when money loses its power. And that, most likely, will never happen. Thank you for following this story. If you found it interesting, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with others. For now, this is goodbye. Thank you for staying with Societal Stories.